Yeah, that's a great lead into the next question. So, conventional wisdom for a long time, people talking about and working on a defensive of Taiwan plan is that the war should be quick. The U.S. should strive to make it quick. And your article refutes those notions, and you point out some paradoxical advantages of a long war. So talk about those for a minute.
Yeah, and those planners could absolutely be right. They might have access to something behind the door that I have no idea exists. But when I look at it just through open source information, you've got 80 miles at its narrowest point between the Taiwan Strait and mainland China, roughly 450 miles from Okinawa to Taiwan. You're looking at about 1,300, I think, from Yokosuka to Taiwan. By the time you get out to Hawaii, over 5,000 miles, over 7,000 from San Diego to Taiwan. So when I'm just doing the time-space force analysis, like factor space really, really poses a significant disadvantage to the U.S. We also have global responsibilities that the Chinese Communist Party doesn't undertake, and even when they do, based on what we're seeing with the Houthis, aren't, I wouldn't say, super committed to upholding.
Right.
So our forces are dispersed and fragmented in a way that theirs aren't. And I think that the idea of a quick war is, okay, we fight and then everything's back to normal afterwards. Except, again, if you look at the analysis done by those war games, it's not back to normal. Like, the U.S. has suffered massive casualties. We've lost massive numbers of aircraft and ships. And then what does the world look like afterwards? The Chinese defense industrial base presumably is somewhat intact, so they can recapitalize their forces much faster. And hey, maybe it's something they make another play for in 2 years. Are we going to be willing, in the wake of a quick victory, to really put the investment back into recapitalizing our own forces? Mm-hmm. And what happens in the interim time period between then and when we actually get those forces back online? Additionally, the Chinese really are dependent on imports and exports in a way that, yes, the whole world is, but not to the same degree. You've got a faltering economy, a falling birth rate, an overcounted census. And if this war goes on for a long period of time, that economic disruption, while painful to the entire world, is excruciatingly painful, I think, to the Chinese Communist Party and their ability to control the populace. I look at the advantages of a long war being, one, we're able to recapitalize our forces and probably emerge out the other side better in terms of force capabilities and numbers and where we were when we started, which isn't just a argument for growing the Navy or the joint force. It's really so that we can ensure the peace afterwards. But it's one that really, really hurts the Chinese Communist Party. And as a result, makes them less likely to act precipitously again after a decisive victory on the part of the United States. So, long story short, it's an economic war with a military component. And I don't think that that's very dissimilar from our strategic approach to fighting the Imperial Japanese during World War II.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I'm reminded that just in the last, really, a little more than a decade, you look at the technology and the implications of fracking to the U.S. economy, right? So we now produce more oil than Saudi Arabia does. We produce most of what we need internally, oil and gas, and the Chinese do not, right? So their economy is very, very dependent on imported energy and imported natural resources. The U.S. is in a better strategic position in terms of energy supply and natural resources, which gives us that, probably the ability to play a longer game, to play the long war, if we're patient about it, in a way that is advantageous, where it's not advantageous to them.
Yeah, and food.
Yeah. Right, food production that's
You
a
know,
very good point. Yep, and that
Chinese are
really,
importing 70% of their cooking oil and a significant portion of their rice, a daily staple crop. I mean,
yeah,
the South China Sea is nearly fished out of their main source of protein. You know, a long war does not look good for the Chinese Communist Party.
no, that's a good point.